Nina da Cunha, and he became governor in November 1529. He shifted the headquarters from Cochin to Goa in 1530, and it was made the capital also. And there happened triangle conflict between Bahadur Shah of Gujarat, Humayun and Portuguese. What happened was when Humayun attacked Bahadur Shah, he sought help from Portuguese and in return he promised Basen and Diu. But Humayun later withdraws in 1536, and with that locals also rebelled against Portuguese. So Bahadur Shah thought that he will raise a wall of partition between his subjects and Portuguese so that they can peacefully stay and create no problems anymore. But Portuguese didn't like this, and they called Bahadur Shah to their ship and killed him in 1537. Then he made settlements in Hooghly also, and it was made headquarter in eastern region of the India. And these Portuguese subjugated Diu in 1535 and Daman in 1559. So what were the favorable conditions that led to the rise of Portuguese in India? First one was divided North India. There was no single power that was maintaining unity throughout the region except the region of Gujarat, which was ruled by Mahmud Begara from 1458 to 1511 AD. And in Deccan, Bahmani kingdom was on the decline and they had no navy power also. And in China, Chinese emperor limited the navigational reach of Chinese ships, and Arab merchants had no organization and unity unlike Portuguese, and Portuguese to their advantage had cannons on their ships. Third major topic in this chapter is Portuguese state. Portuguese state played a larger influence on India than one thinks or gives credit, because most of the coastal regions of India were under them within 50 years of Vasco da Gama's arrival. In West Coast, they hold control of Goa and from Mumbai to Daman and from Diu to Gujarat also. And in South, Mangalore, Kannur, Cochin, Calicut, which was vital for spice trade. And in East Coast, Santhom in Chennai, Nagapattinam in Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, especially Hooghly in 1590s. They had control of these regions. And envoys and ambassadors were regularly exchanged between Goa and major kingdoms of that time in India. And treaties were also signed between Goa and Deccan in 1570. Portuguese always had a role to play in battles for balance of power between Vijayanagara and Deccan Sultans, Deccanese and Mughals and Marathas. One thing to note here is that Portuguese were the first one to arrive and the last one to leave. And in 1961, Government of India acquired recaptured Goa, Daman and Diu from the Portuguese. So how was the administration carried out? At the head position was Viceroy, also known as Governor, for a term of 3 years, and he was assisted by Secretary, and Secretary was later replaced by Council, and next in position was Vedo da Fazenda. He was responsible for revenues, cargoes and dispatch of fleets, and next in position was captains, who were aided by factors in looking after fortress from Africa to China coast. Portuguese always had conflicts with Moors in North Africa and also with Arabs. And when they came to India, they had conflicts with Muslims. And when inquisitions started in Goa, that is, if someone does any kind of act or something which is against the Christianity, Catholic Church, then they will be punished. Portuguese also started to have conflicts with Hindus. So both Muslims and Hindus were persecuted if they didn't agree to convert to Christianity. And despite this intolerant behavior, Jesuits um, were successful in impressing Akbar. So, what Akbar does, he sends a letter to Portuguese authorities at Goa in September 1579. So, these authorities sent two learned priests. Um, First one was Rodolphe Aquaviva, and another person was Antonio Montserrat. And these people reached Fatehpur Sikri in Feb 28, 1580. They were received with honor, but they failed in their mission because their main aim was to convert Akbar into the Christianity fold. And second mission called by Akbar was in 1590, and it also ended on the same note. And in 1595 at Lahore, mission was conducted where Fathers Jerome Xavier and Emmanuel Pinheiro went, and it became a kind of permanent institution which promoted secular politics. They also didn't succeeded in converting the emperor into Christianity, but their letters provide a vital information about later part of Akbar's reign. And during Jahangir's reign, what happened? He initially neglected Jesuits. Later on, he reconciled with them. In 1606, he renewed his favors and allowed them to retain church that was built in Lahore, and they were given freedom to carry out their activities. And in 1608, series of baptisms took place in Agra. What is baptism? It is kind of purification rituality in Christian religion. These Jesuit priests carried out activities publicly. They had very liberal environment, but they still failed to convert Jahangir to Christianity. And with these arrogant actions of Portuguese viceroys, also created rift with Mughals. So their religious policy, in conclusion, was more on the negative side than on the positive side. It created a kind of negative image of Portuguese in the minds of people of India. How these Portuguese lose favor with the Mughals? Let's see. What happened in 1608? Captain William Hawkins with ship Hector reached Surat. He carried a letter of James I seeking trade permission in India from Jahangir. Portuguese and also Father Pinheiro tried to prevent Hawkins but failed. Jahangir was pleased with Hawkins because he brought gifts for him, and he also conversed in Turkey language without interpreter's help. Jahangir offers very friendly reception to the Captain Hawkins, and he appoints Hawkins as a Mansabdar, and Hawkins marries daughter of Mubarak Shah, and trading permission was also given. This offended Portuguese. So Portuguese hold negotiations with Jahangir, and there happens a deal between them. So what they do now, they stop English ships from entering Surat. Hawkins left court because he was unable to counter Portuguese conspiracies. Next year, in 1612, Captain Best, with ship Dragon and Oceander, defeated Portuguese. Jahangir was pleased with this, and he was very happy to see how these English defeated Portuguese. And along with this, in parallelly, their piracy, Portuguese piracy, was on the peak. This created conflicts with Mughals. In 1613, what these Portuguese does is they captured the Mughal ships, plundered their area. So, but they still had favors from from Jahangir. But in Shah Jahan's reign, they forever lost their advantageous position in India, and they lost hopes of converting the emperor into Christianity also. So this is how Portuguese lose favor with the Mughals. Next comes an important event that happened during Shah Jahan's reign, that is capture of Hooghly. Because of imperial firman obtained in 1579, maybe during Akbar's reign, I think, these Portuguese settled near Satgaon in Bengal. They started constructing big buildings to consolidate their position, and during this, trade shifted to Hooghly region. So Portuguese monopolized the manufacture of salt, they built custom house and levied duty on tobacco. But one thing that disturbed Mughal was cruel slave trade, that is capturing children of Muslims and Hindus and making benefits profits out of that by selling them somewhere or by initiating them into Christianity. But during this thing, they captured two slave girls of Mumtaz Mahal. This is the major mistake was done by them, which led Shah Jahan to take a serious action against them. He ordered Qasim Khan to seize Hooghly. They captured 400 Portuguese people as prisoners. They were given the option to convert into Islam or else die. And these all things happened in June 24, 1632, siege of Hooghly. And most of the Portuguese fled from the Hooghly to some unknown locations. So next major topic is decline of Portuguese. Before we dwell on to the reasons, first let's see how they were defeated by English and Dutch powers. They were ousted by Dutch from Southeast Asia in 1596 and loss of Surat to English in 1612. Remember Captain Best who defeated Portuguese fleet. And Dutch win all Portuguese forts on Malabar coast in 1663. By 1700 AD, commercial influence of Portuguese had already declined. There was individual trade and piracy was ongoing as usual by making Hooghly as the base, and rise of powerful dynasties in Egypt, Persia, North India, and Marathas, who captured Salsette and Basen from Portuguese in 1739. This was huge setback to Portuguese, and their intolerant religious policy made everyone unhappy. And then dishonest trade practices as usual, and their piracy acts also, and their arrogance and violence attitude was not liked. And then discovery of Brazil, which later on became economic center of Portuguese, also discouraged Portuguese from focusing on their trade in India. And union of Spain and Portugal, which made Portugal to take part in wars against England and Holland. So this affected their trade monopoly in India. And knowledge of sea route was also known to Dutch and English by now, and they had greater resources as compared to Portuguese. And spice trade was more under the control of Dutch. So these are the reasons why decline of Portuguese happened. Next, what was the contribution of Portuguese in India? Despite their negatives, what was their contribution? It initiated the European era in India and the emergence of naval power. First time a foreign power came through sea to India, and they showed the importance of naval power. But if we look back into the history of India, we see that Cholas were very powerful when it comes to naval strength. And ships carried cannons. This was the first step in gaining monopoly over trade with use of actual force. So they abided by no rules except their own, and they wanted dominance in trade. In Malabar 16th century, they showed their military innovation in body armor, matchlock men, and guns, and these influenced Mughals' guns and artillery of the stirrup. And onshore, what was their contribution? They introduced system of drilling groups of infantry, which we call as armies of sepoys. You can recall during 1857 revolt how the sepoys rebelled. This system was actually introduced by Portuguese to counter the Dutch. Later on, this was taken by French and English and Marathas and Sikhs later on. And then they became masters of improved techniques at sea. So multi-decked ships, which were designed so much in such a well manner that it had the strength to counter the Atlantic gales, which allowed these ships to carry heavy armament. And castled prow and stern, which was used to repel or launch attacks on other ships. And they had organization skills, which is reflected in their arsenals, dockyards, and regular system of pilots, mapping and pitting state forces against private merchants. And all these knowledge of Portuguese were later adopted by Mughals, Marathas, Dutch, and English. And in culture area, missionaries and church acted as patrons of painters, carver, and sculptor, and they were interpreters of Portuguese as well as of European art and music. And art of silversmith and goldsmith in Goa was on the rise. Like filigree, fretted foliage, metal work embedding jewels were promoted, and churches had woodwork in interiors and painted ceilings and followed a simple architecture plan. So this was the contribution of Portuguese in India. That's it. Thank you.